Have some views now on this particular debate and other developments in terms of preparedness for the elections. And right next to me is a gentleman you've seen actually as part of that story by Brenda Wanga, and that is Dr. Otiende Amollo. He is the Ombudsman Emeritus. That's a new word I've actually learned today. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
But more importantly and appropriately for this particular discussion, he is the ODM the nominee for the Rarieda constituency as a member of Parliament. And congratulations for clinching that, of course. That is not, given what we witnessed from the primaries, that's not a small feat there. And next to him, not a politician, but he's very keen on what is happening in the political scene, and that is Andrew Songa, the programs manager at the Kenya Human Rights Commission, and has been part and attending the national conference that was happening earlier this week, actually 3 days at KICC by the IEBC and stakeholders, and he'll give us a bit more on that. And Harrison Kinyanjui is a lawyer, an advocate, of course, and has some legal bearing in terms of the discussion that has been going on today and in the week, just to be exact. Let us start with Bwana Songa, and you've been part of this particular national conference. I want to get your input on the discussion that has now dominated what we're talking about, preparedness for elections. Based on what you saw at the national conference, are we in the right direction?
Thank you, Mark. We are on the generally correct trajectory, but the reality is that there are serious challenges that are plaguing our electoral preparedness, which if we don't course correct at this point in time, then we will undermine the prospects for a credible and peaceful election in 2017. Now, the national conference, which brought together different stakeholders and mandate holders who are responsible for getting us through this electoral process, actually had this at the heart of the discussions over the 3 days. And what emerged is that we all accepted that we are not in the right place in as far as public trust and confidence in the electoral process is concerned. There are key issues that emerged from the conference with regards to the issue of transparency, for example, within the different processes that are being undertaken by the IEBC, but also by other relevant mandate holders such as the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, the police, and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. Key questions were brought to those mandate holders with regards to what they are doing in response to some of the challenges we have seen right from the onset of the mass voter registration exercise to where we are now, discussing the registration, or the audit of the voters register, as well as now dealing with the procurement of ballot papers. In all that, what came up was a dissatisfaction from the public in terms of them saying, we have seen some malpractices, we have seen use of public resources within the context of campaigns, we have seen violence during the nominations, and what we have not seen is action by these mandate holders to call people to account. We have seen the IEBC get asked very pertinent questions with regards to the electoral process. The ballot paper procurement process is the current one now, but before then, even during the mass voter registration exercise, there were certain questions with regards to, for example, how the registration kits were being distributed around the country, the involvement of certain state officials in that process. And we've not seen sufficient answers or accountability of some officers.
Well, one of the answers that has come through is that no turning back, especially with this particular issue of the ballot printing tender, because of time. Do you buy this argument based on what the chair of the IEBC says? There's no time to go through a process of procurement for another company, and this will delay and push the August 8th date forward in terms of elections?
Certainly not. Mark, there are two elements of any election that are fundamental. The elections must be credible, and then there must be peace before, during, and after elections. You cannot emphasize one over the other because they go together. You cannot say you're in a situation where there's a danger of having elections that are not credible. And although you have a short time, you'd rather not deal with it because of that time, because the consequences of an election that are not credible can be immense. That's number one. Number two, the process that the IEBC has adopted to award the tender is called direct procurement. In direct procurement, there are no timelines. You can procure within a day, and there are no limitations in terms of who you procure from. So the issue of time would not be the fundamental issue. If the issue was that perhaps a contract has been signed and payment has been made and all that, that would be slightly different. But as far as I know, Parliament only approved, I think, the payment, the first batch of payment a few days ago. So I'm sure no payment has been made. So I don't think it's a question of time. The question we need to address ourselves is there necessity to interfere with that contract? I think that is the fundamental question.
All right. Well, I'd probably just throw that to Bona Kinyanjui. Do you feel there's necessity to foster or at least buy the credibility that is necessary in this process? Should we review this?
No, absolutely not. I think we have gotten to a point, excuse me, a very dangerous point, where one player in the political game has opted to have every manner of setback, lamentation after lamentation. We don't have a credible register. Oh, we need an audit of the register. That's okay. If the IEBC has conducted 20 by-elections using the same company, you didn't raise a voice. When a by-election was conducted in Kajiado and you won, when did the president allegedly meet these people of Al Ghurair? Allegedly in October 2016, before half of those by-elections were conducted. Then you wake up in the month of June, midstream, just a couple of days before the election, and you tell us, this election will not be credible. What am I reading? There is a certain script that is being followed so as to render this election, when the time is due, quote unquote, not credible. With the end result that you have a negotiated settlement of governance. If you choose, mkatenusu. Now, I'm saying that against the backdrop of a so-called NASA organization to which my learned friend, Otiende Amollo, subscribes to, that has absolutely no manifesto as we speak. It's been going out to sell itself to the people on one sole agenda: get rid of Jubilee. But which political party in the entire globe, entire world, not globe, entire world, that can purport to seek to seize political power without a manifesto? This is like a pilot flying a plane without a flight path.
Granted, the manifesto is being launched on Monday.
No. Look at that. Look at that.
Be corrected if I'm wrong.
Yeah, let me finish that point.
But are you saying all along they're running without any compass, based on what your argument?
Their compass is one. Let us torpedo, let us short circuit this election, so that in the end we do not have an election on August 8th, and we come to the drawing table, quote unquote. Why do I say that? There is a third party alliance leader who we have just played the clip there, who seem to be playing along that script. And when you connect the dot, and he says, let's have the UN oversee the process when we get to August 8th elections, after the so-called suspension of the election because of the alleged printing problem, the printer problem of the ballots.
All right, let's get some responses from Andrew Songa first.
I think, first of all, Mark, just to steer away from the political issue, because I don't, and we don't as civil society consider this to be a partisan debate. The credibility question of an election is one that is interlinked and cumulative. By that I mean, how we go from step to step in the process determines whether at the very end we will determine that process to have been credible, free, fair, and transparent. And so we cannot swat away certain critical questions that are raised with an aspect such as procurement. And when the IEBC talks about issues such as time being a constraint, that for me is far from sufficient when it's in the face of clear critical questions that must be answered.
Right.
Because beyond just the efficacy of getting ballot papers, some aspersions have been made as to the integrity of some of the officials associated with this process. We are also from the outside looking in, seeing a series of dismissals within the commission of certain key aspects of management. What we need is transparency and clarity on exactly what is going on.
The procurement department, nonetheless.
Exactly, and very quickly, I would also want to highlight that the caution with this particular debate is that it kind of almost mirrors to where we were previously before the 2007 election, when we had a unilateral selection of commissioners into that electoral commission. And we also the domino effect that had with regards to how then other people perceived the credibility of that process. So I would really caution all the parties involved in this debate to ensure that what we have or what we require is collective action and collective leadership out of this crisis, and not a unilateral measure, such as unfortunately the chair seems to be prescribing by saying we have no time and we will move on regardless and print ballot papers. That will be very detrimental to the viability of having a credible election and one that will have public confidence. Yeah. So this is part of the issues that we were raising in that conference with regards to transparency, effective communication with the public, and accountability for some of the actions that are undertaken in the process. Dr.
Otiende, as it's being made to seem right now, is there's a delay tactic or delay agenda. Why now, as Harrison has put it? Why now? What's the agenda?
Mark, three things surprise me. The media surprises me, and I'll explain why. My friend Harrison surprises me, and the reaction from the Jubilee team also surprises me. Let me start with Harrison. Harrison is my friend, but he's a politician in a lawyer suit. No. And I think he ought to own up to that.
Could you clarify that?
Yes, I will clarify that. I have known Harrison for a number of years. I am a lawyer and a politician, I'd admit to it. Clearly, Harrison is a lawyer and a politician. And it makes it easier for you to put your point. And clearly a Jubilee lawyer. Okay. Now, let me make the second point. When Harrison makes certain statements as a lawyer, they're unfortunate. Statements that politicians who are not lawyers can be allowed to make. For example, one, that what God wants is to postpone the election. Surely Harrison knows. I wrote the Constitution, he knows the Constitution, that the date of 8th of August cannot be adjusted except if one of the presidential candidates dies. Nobody has sought for postponement of that date at all. Secondly, when he says that all this is geared towards Nusumkate, Harrison knows that the day in 2010, we adopted the Constitution. We threw away the idea of having a shared government. We now have a system where you win the election, it's a presidential system, you form the government. Even if we did not have elections on 8th of August, President Uhuru will continue as president until the date we have elections. Who would benefit from President Uhuru continuing indefinitely? It cannot be NASA. So those are cheap propaganda that a lawyer should not make. Now let me come to the media. Right. I am surprised. Here is Raila Amollo Odinga making statements at a conference, which are then bolstered by Mudavadi and Wetangula. And they make three essential claims. One is that this team that has been appointed were here in Kenya and they came to State House. That story has not run, okay. Secondly, they indicate that President Kenyatta was hosted in Dubai and they named the hotel, you know, it's called Burj Khalifa. And thirdly, they indicate that the president's brother has associations in terms of a company with this company. Right. Instead of asking very fundamental questions, asking President Kenyatta, is it true that you hosted these people? Is it true you were hosted by them in Dubai?
But you saw what his foot soldiers said.
No. I'm saying about the president.
Right.
Yes. The media engages with the president every day. His foot soldiers were not accused. The president was mentioned. Instead of asking Muhoho Kenyatta, do you have an association, and printing the response, instead of confirming these things, we are then treated to a diversionary tactics that, oh, Raila is fronting for another. You know,
media.
It's very curious. So as a lawyer,
yes,
and Harrison knows, if you are going to court the next day, then your client comes and tells you that yesterday I went into a restaurant and I found the judge seated with the person we are arguing with. Okay. You're obligated to tell the judge that I do not know what you discussed. It's even possible you are discussing about the Bible. But because you met that person, you must step aside. That is the fundamental issue. Right. Now, the Jubilee team says, and this is my last point, which is why I'm surprised with this reaction, that they do not care whoever is appointed to print the ballot. But then, there's one team, and it's not just about NASA. Elections is not about NASA and Jubilee. Elections is about this country. Credibility of election does not go to NASA or Jubilee. It's about everyone. And therefore, if it happens merely that there's an issue on credibility which has been raised by NASA, it could have been raised by anybody. Right. But once it raised, it needs to be addressed. If the Jubilee team's position is that they do not care, then it makes the work much easier. Then it is for IEBC to investigate these claims.
All right. Harrison, this argument of NASA trying to cause a crisis of sorts and a delay does not hold legally in terms of the timelines. It cannot be.
Technically. But before I come to that, let me disabuse the viewer that I am a politician, contrary to what my learned friend is attributing to me. Unlike my learned friend, I am not a contestant in any political elective post, neither do I look forward to being nominated in any post. So that distinguishes us and places us in completely different pedestals. He has a stake in this. He has a personal interest, part of it being deeply in ODM. I do not. I'm here as a lawyer, never been interested in politics as a politician. But the politics of the day directly implicate me, directly implicate my children, directly implicate my future and my country. And therefore, I have every right to comment and to look and to scrutinize any political actions, move, or a decision that implicates that position.
But factually so.
But factually so, I'm not a politician. Now, factually so, yes, you're right. Now, what amazes me is a NASA brigade, with respect to my learned friend, completely veer off the issue that I've raised. And he also did not address it. Why now? If the president allegedly met Al Ghurair representatives in October 2016, a fact which I believe was within their knowledge in the public domain, as I have stated before, which I have brought to his attention, he never alluded to it or directly addressed it. Why didn't you lament when the by-election voting materials were published by that same company? 20 by-elections. They didn't. That aside, I have also seen they are trying to deflect from their own inefficiencies, inadequacies, unpreparedness for the election, lacking a manifesto. They have none. The blueprint by means of which then you choose or you elect a government nation must be well documented. Sell those ideas. As a matter of fact, if we wanted to flip the coin and say, let's go their way, the alleged public resources are being used to popularize Jubilee, Section 13, subsection F of the Election Offences Act of 2016 criminalizes what their leader has been going around doing. Peddling propaganda, throwing around insults, all of those constitute a crime. But, be that as it may, you see here the question being now propounded that Al Ghurair should be removed from this process of publishing the voting materials. And what do they have as an option?